Hi, very good morning. I'm Dr. Janak Patel, MD, General Physician. I'm not a cardiologist. All my video lectures are mainly for educative purpose. This will be useful to the person who are doing private practice as well as for the interns and also for the fourth year students. I'm going to discuss today whatever literature I've gathered from YouTube's, Google, slideshare.com and others. I'll be discussing with you. Today we are going to discuss regarding one of the very known thing, but usually we don't pay attention. We call that as MINOCA, that is myocardial infarction in non-obstructive coronary artery disease or coronary microvascular dysfunction, that is called CMVD, or also called as microvascular angina. So whenever a person gets a myocardial infarction and there is no obstruction in the coronary artery or obstruction is less than 50%, it is labeled as MINOCA. It is a whole new ball game. There are good number of another terminology also which are being utilized, like troponin positive non-obstructive coronary artery disease. Short form it is called as a TPNOCA, or ischemic non-obstructive coronary artery disease, or myocardial infarction non-obstructive coronary artery disease. This is much discussed, but very little is understood. Still, there are a lot of things which are to be understood and put into private practice. So, we'll be going through this in short. We'll be discussing the definition, etiology, pathophysiology, clinical features, investigations, differential diagnosis, treatment and complications. Now, before we start, I'm just narrating one case scenario, so we'll understand why it is of importance. 53-year-old woman with hypertension, hyperlipidemia, who recently lost her job, so must be in an anxiety, presented with a chest pain radiating to her left arm and jaw. Symptoms lasted for more than 30 minutes and gradually resolved with rest. Initial troponin was elevated to 3.13. ECG in emergency department relieved normal sinus rhythm with ST segment elevation in V1 to V6. An echocardiography was notable for left ventricular ejection fraction was reduced to 55%, and there was subtle apical hypokinesia. Now, if you look at all this clinical picture, it suggests definitely the person is developing acute MI. And in that acute MI, angiography is the first thing which is being done. So LV angiography was asked for, and in an angiography there was no significant obstruction of a coronary artery, and this suggested that the person is having an acute MI, but there is no significant occlusion of coronary artery. So that terminology came into account. Myocardial infarction with non-obstructive coronary artery referred to a clinical presentation consistent with MI without significant coronary artery disease. Hence, this incorporates a heterogeneous group of conditions that may involve both coronary artery and non-coronary pathological conditions, with the latter including the cardiac and extracardiac disorders. Means non-coronary pathophysiology can be cardiac or can be extracardiac. And this terminology came into account, MINOCA. And in this, cardiac MR, or we call cardiac MRI, will be very, very useful to differentiate good number of other conditions which will mimic identical like MINOCA, like myocarditis, Takotsubo, even hypertrophic obstructive cardiomyopathy, etc. All those conditions can be easily differentiated by doing a good cardiac MRI. CMR, short form we call CMR. Now, as far as the diagnostic criteria for myocardial infarction with non-obstructive coronary artery, or we call MINOCA, this particular criteria will suggest a working diagnosis but not 100% diagnostic. The diagnosis of MINOCA is made immediately upon the coronary angiography in the patient presenting with features consistent with acute MI as detailed by the following criteria, that is universal criteria for acute MI which are fulfilled in that particular person, and when coronary angiography is performed, non-obstructive coronary arteries on angiography defined as no coronary artery stenosis more than 50% in any potential regional artery, infarct regional artery. So if a person is having say infarct in an anterior wall, LAD and left main coronary artery are not involved, or stenosis is not more than 50%, and there is no clinically overt specific causes for the acute presentation. When all these criteria are fulfilled, means you have got clinical as well as ECG and biomarker suggestive of acute MI. Coronary angiography shows coronary artery stenosis less than 50%, and there is no clinical overt specific cause for acute presentation. It is labeled as MINOCA. Hence, if you go a little bit in detail, acute MI criteria we know very well, positive cardiac biomarkers, and infarct by means of symptoms of ischemia, new or presumed significant STT changes or new left bundle branch block, development of a pathological Q wave, or new loss of viable myocardium on an echo, which is shown by a new regional wall motion abnormality, and intracoronary thrombus evident by angiography or on an autopsy. And if in this particular person, these are the criteria, diagnostic criteria for acute MI. So it is diagnosed by this criteria, and when the angiography is done, the coronary artery stenosis is less than 50% in an infarct related artery. So you have got almost no stenosis or a mild stenosis, that is between 30 to 50%. And there is no clinically overt specific causes for acute presentation. And this is at the time of angiography, or there is a necessary for to further evaluate the patient for underlying cause of MINOCA presentation. Then we label that as these are the diagnostic criteria for MINOCA. So this becomes very, very important to presume a person who has come to you with acute MI and coronary angiography does not show significant coronary artery occlusion. Hence, this is also labeled as coronary microvascular dysfunction, that there is angina with normal coronary angiogram and evident with a stress-induced myocardial ischemia. Coronary flow reserve is less than 2 on adenosine-induced hyperemia, and there is no spasm of epicardial coronary artery on acetylcholine provocation. So when after doing these two tests, if you demonstrate that the coronary flow reserve is less than 2 and there is no spasm of epicardial coronary artery on acetylcholine provocation, it is going in favor of coronary microvascular dysfunction, or we call as MINOCA, or also you can call as microvascular angina. In previously, that is in 2007, this was also labeled as cardiac syndrome X, meaning typical stable angina exclusively or predominantly induced by effort finding compatible with myocardial ischemia, coronary microvascular dysfunction on diagnostic investigations, coronary arteries are near normal, normal or near normal on angiography, and absence of any other specific cardiac disease like variant angina, we call it a vasospastic angina, or there was no cardiomyopathy evidence and there was no evidence of valvular heart disease. So it was labeled as cardiac syndrome X. Now we label that as coronary artery microvascular dysfunction, or MINOCA, or microvascular angina. These are the terms which are now being utilized. So chest pain with normal coronary artery, and you exclude other cardiac and non-cardiac causes, now you can label that as microvascular angina. If it is secondary due to cardiomyopathy, aortic stenosis, or after PCI or CABG, this is called secondary microvascular angina. And if the person is having a stable microvascular angina, predominant or effort angina, then it is called stable. And if there is an acute rest angina, then it is labeled as unstable microvascular angina, where you have excluded cardiomyopathy, aortic stenosis, and other causes of microvascular angina. So when that is excluded, now you can put them into a group called as a primary microvascular angina, and then you can divide into stable and unstable depending upon the presentation. Possibly of a primary coronary microvascular dysfunction can be considered only after excluding the secondary causes. So this is absolutely important that you rule out cardiomyopathy, valvular heart disease, and other possible causes of coronary microvascular dysfunction like myocarditis, etc. So like obstructive coronary artery disease, myocardial disease like hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, dilated cardiomyopathy, post-PCI and post-CABG. This has to be ruled out. And after ruling out this, if the person is still having a coronary microvascular disease, it is labeled as primary. And depending upon the symptoms, stable, unstable, and you can label as myocardial infarction, non-obstructive coronary artery disease called MINOCA. So this underlying pathophysiology is heterogeneous. This is responsible for a non-uniform response to the different diagnostic tests and therapeutic approaches. So angina with a normal coronary arteries is still a dilemma. In 1973, it was labeled as cardiac syndrome X. In 1985, now the word microvascular angina is being utilized, and now newer and newer terminology will be added as we undergo the pathophysiology and we understand the different mechanisms. So it is a black box and you will find lot of puzzles. So coronary microvascular dysfunction is really a puzzle because we cannot get that picture in routine coronary angiography. So there are a lot of challenges in defining MINOCA. Now there is a term called as a troponin positive non-obstructive coronary arteries. Troponin positive non-obstructive coronary artery disease, meaning you have got a myocardial injury and troponin is positive. And on angiography there is no obstruction or obstruction is less than 50% in a coronary artery, affected regional coronary artery. We can divide into three groups: cardiac groups, non-cardiac groups or extracardiac causes, and MINOCA. In cardiac causes which are non-ischemic, means there is no involvement of coronary arteries, like myocarditis, Takotsubo, and cardiomyopathy like hypertrophic obstructive cardiomyopathy, dilated cardiomyopathy, hypertensive ischemic heart disease or hypertensive heart disease, and also infiltrative cardiomyopathy. These are the groups which has to be ruled out before you label that as MINOCA. And in among the extracardiac group where troponin will be positive and coronary artery are not involved, like pulmonary embolism, sepsis, cerebrovascular stroke, and also ARDS. So these two groups has to be ruled out before you label any person of troponin positive non-occlusive coronary artery as MINOCA. And in MINOCA we have got lot of pathophysiology, some of those which are mentioned here, that there will be plaque disruption, or there is a coronary artery spasm, or there is a microvascular dysfunction, or there is a thromboembolism. This was published in a paper in 2017 and it was also discussed in a European Society of Cardiology in 2018. So diagnosis of microvascular angina requires an exclusion of epicardial abnormality by coronary angiography. So if epicardial coronary angio shows almost non-occlusive, means coronary artery occlusion is less than 50%, then there is a possibility of coronary microvascular dysfunction. This has to be kept in mind and you have to rule out the non-cardiac groups and cardiac groups which are non-occlusive also. We already mentioned in previous slide. So criteria for myocardial infarction is biomarkers, which is classical symptoms of acute MI. ECG showing you new ischemic changes in the form of ST segment elevation, development of a pathological Q wave, and you demonstrate new regional wall motion abnormality on echo and on angiography. There is non-occlusive. Then you will search for coronary artery microvascular dysfunction groups. So that has to be done. So biomarker positive, clinical symptoms, ECG criteria, echo criteria, etc. fits well with MI. But coronary angiography does not suggest coronary artery occlusion. Then you will be looking for a group of microvascular disorders. So microvascular disorders can produce myocardial injury, troponin is positive, and there is an atheromatous plaque disruption with thrombosis, will put them into a group we called as acute MI. You can demonstrate this on angiography. It will be an acute MI, but not microvascular disorders, and that will be epicardial blood vessels. But if there is a myocardial injury related to acute myocardial ischemia, and this is because of reduced myocardial perfusion, either because of coronary artery spasm, coronary embolism, microvascular dysfunction, coronary artery dissection, sustained bradyarrhythmias, hypotension or shock, respiratory failure, or severe anemia, which will reduce myocardial perfusion, and you've got a condition where there is an increased oxygen demand, like tachycardia, hypertension, with or without LVH. Now, if there is an imbalance between the perfusion and demand, and microvascular dysfunction takes place, it will be in favor of a microvascular dysfunction disorders. Reasons for elevation of cardiac troponin values will be due to cardiac condition and non-cardiac condition. In this, you will have elevation of troponin like heart failure, myocarditis, cardiomyopathy, particularly Takotsubo, coronary artery revascularization procedures, cardiac procedures other than revascularization, catheter ablation, defibrillation shock, cardiac contusion, etc. will elevate troponin. But in this condition, you may not have coronary artery occlusion possible. At the same time, this will be non-cardiac groups like sepsis, CKD, stroke, particularly subarachnoid hemorrhage, pulmonary embolism, pulmonary hypertension, infiltrative disease of myocardium like amyloidosis, sarcoidosis, chemotherapeutic agents, critically ill patient, strenuous exercise, etc. can also have elevation of cardiac troponin without any coronary artery occlusion. So all this has to be ruled out before you label as microvascular dysfunction. As far as types of MI is concerned, type 1 is because of spontaneous plaque rupture, which will be clearly demonstrable by coronary angiography, while type 2, that is an ischemic myocardial necrosis resulting from marked increase in myocardial oxygen demand and marked decrease in myocardial blood flow. This particular group will include microvascular dysfunction, while sudden cardiac death related to coronary artery thrombosis or following a PCI, MI following a PCI, or MI following a coronary artery bypass graft, that is 3, 4 and 5 types, will not be included in myocardial dysfunctions. So type 2 will be one of the variety which will tell you that it could be because of imbalance between demand and supply. So in a type 2, we come across a group of disorders. So in that, myocardial disease like hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, dilated cardiomyopathy, amyloidosis, myocarditis, aortic stenosis. In this, you will have myocardial involvement, troponin may be positive, and that will give rise to what we call a secondary coronary microvascular dysfunction, as well as stable angina and acute coronary syndrome that comes in type 3 will be also responsible for coronary microvascular dysfunction, and type 4 iatrogenic like PCI and CABG will be also responsible for secondary coronary microvascular dysfunction, while type 1, in absence of myocardial disease and obstructive coronary artery disease. Now if you get microvascular angina, that is a coronary microvascular dysfunction we call as a primary coronary microvascular dysfunction. So this was the classification for coronary microvascular dysfunction, while this is a classification for type of MI, that is type 1, type 2. Type 2 will have microvascular dysfunction groups, coronary microvascular dysfunction group, while type 1, type 3 and type 4 and 5 will be not responsible for microvascular dysfunction groups. But these three, that is 4 and 5, type 3 and 4, that is included here in secondary. So in secondary you come across myocardial disease, obstructive coronary artery disease and iatrogenic group. This will be in secondary coronary microvascular dysfunction group. Well, this will be primary, type 1 classification of coronary microvascular dysfunction will be primary. This 3 will be secondary. So type 1 primary, type 2 presence of cardiomyopathy, obstructive coronary artery disease. So that is 2, 3, 4 and 5 will be responsible for secondary group. This will be secondary group. This will be primary group. So primary group, secondary group, myocardial disease, obstructive disease and iatrogenic. So primary you can call microvascular variant angina and stress related cardiomyopathy. So primary coronary microvascular dysfunction with ST segment elevation can be divided into two: microvascular variant angina and stress related cardiomyopathy. So in general, now if we put together all, ischemic heart disease you can divide into stable coronary syndrome and acute coronary syndrome. In stable we have got an obstructive coronary artery disease like stable angina and non-obstructive coronary artery which produces ischemia but there is no MI criteria. So that is called INOCA, that is ischemic non-obstructive coronary artery disease. And in acute coronary we have got MI, myocardial infarction with non-obstructive coronary artery disease called MINOCA. You have got unstable angina, non-STEMI and STEMI. So this is the way you put them together, and you can further divide coronary microvascular dysfunction into primary and secondary. Primary where you rule out the other groups, and in secondary you got a cardiomyopathy, that is myocardial disease. You have got a coronary artery occlusion, that is type 3. We have already shown you here, that is type 2, type 3 cardiomyopathy groups, that is type 2. Type 3 is obstructive coronary artery disease, and in presence after coronary intervention, that is like PCI, that is called type 4, and type 5 is after cardiac transplantation or after CABG, that will be type 4. And this is a classification which is, so this 2, 3, 4, 5 will be secondary and type 1 will be primary. We have already mentioned this cardiac syndrome X, where chest pain with normal coronary artery. It was also labeled as CPNCA, chest pain, normal coronary artery. Now we mention as ischemic non-occlusive coronary artery, and that is a patient presents with a typical chest pain. Investigation suggests ECG, PET scan, cardiac MRI, myocardial scintigraphy suggestive of ischemia, and coronary angiography is nearly normal, or there may be an obstruction less than 50%, then you will put them into a group called as a cardio syndrome X. Now that is being replaced by INOCA and MINOCA. So as far as the etiology is concerned, coronary causes, non-coronary causes. So underlying pathophysiology as far as coronary causes is concerned, like vasospastic angina, epicardial artery spasm, coronary microvascular disorders like coronary slow flow, microvascular angina, microvascular spasm, coronary plaque disruption, spontaneous coronary thrombosis or embolism, and mixed obstructive coronary artery disease. These are the causes which are called coronary causes, and non-coronary causes will include which can be myocardial disorders like myocarditis, Takotsubo, dilated cardiomyopathy or hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, and non-cardiac causes like pulmonary embolism, CKD, stroke, sepsis, and even ARDS. This will put into a group we will call as secondary groups, while this will be put into what we call as primary groups. Prevalence will be ranging from 10 to 14% of acute MI groups, and it presents with almost 1/3 with STEMI and 2/3 with non-STEMI. So 2/3 in the non-STEMI patient are almost microvascular dysfunction, and 1/3 in a STEMI are presenting as microvascular dysfunctions. They are more common in younger age groups, and female are at more risk, and 25% of angina recurrence at 12 months. So this is the prevalence. Angina can occur during increased oxygen demand or at the rest or on ordinary physical activity. Hypertonus of the diseased vessel can produce symptoms of angina like variant angina or Prinzmetal angina, and spasm of a normal coronary artery causing an angina. It was also labeled as Mézery angina, and this was the term which was being utilized. There are some risk factors which are being mentioned, like smoking, which is quite common in younger individuals, and it is accounting for 45 to 75% of the time. Age, more common in younger age group. The person with a CRP elevation, like highly specific CRP, physical stress, magnesium deficiency, hyperventilation, Valsalva maneuver, cocaine, symptomatic drugs, ergot alkaloids, or maybe because of catheter induced, and this can produce vasospasm. This was the another epidemiology which was published. In Japanese population, it is almost close to 40%. There was demonstration of a multiple spasm on provocative test, which was more than 2 in Japanese, 24.3% in Taiwan's, and 19.3% in Taiwan's. Sorry, it was 24.3% in Japanese, and Caucasian was 7.5%. It was more in men than women, and the age was between 40 to 70. So MINOCA prevalence is almost 5 to 6% of acute MI, with a range of 5 to 15%. It is more common in younger age as compared to acute MI. Women are more prone, close to almost 50%. And risk factors like diabetes, dyslipidemia, hypertension, and smoking is more responsible, and they present more with non-STEMI than STEMI, because almost non-STEMI 2/3 and in STEMI 1/3. This is a diagram which is showing you how the microvascular circulation is being affected. I'll be going through a simple most slide. So, troponin positive, non-obstructive coronary artery, where cardiac causes are responsible, what are the pathophysiology, and non-cardiac causes, what are the pathophysiology. So with the cardiac pathophysiology, in an epicardial vessels, you can have a plaque disruption, spontaneous coronary artery dissection, thromboembolism, or vasospasm. So these are the four main mechanisms as far as epicardial vessel is concerned. While in a microvascular region, microvascular intraluminal obstruction or extravascular compression, this will be in a cardiac groups. While in a non-cardiac groups like pulmonary embolism, sepsis and stroke, epicardial vessel, vasospastic angina, or coronary artery ectasia, or there is a slow flow. Also, this will be ending up cardiac causes into ischemic variety, that is ischemic non-obstructive coronary artery, which will be microvascular wise mental stress induced ischemia and microvascular dysfunction. These are all the mechanisms which are responsible for, we call as MINOCA or INOCA. In INOCA we don't come across infarct, but in MINOCA there is a clinical symptoms, ECG criteria, biomarkers will be positive, regional wall abnormality may be present, but coronary angiography will show you obstruction less than 50%, and this will be all the mechanisms, and still there are lot many things to be understood. So myocardial ischemia can be there because of dissection, can be there because of vasospastic, or can be because of atherosclerosis. So this vasospastic and dissection can end up with what we call as the epicardial coronary artery involvement. While as far as the microvascular circulation is concerned, we have already mentioned that microvascular circulation can be involved because of mental stress, dysfunction, intraluminal obstruction, or extravascular compression, any one of these pathophysiology. While as far as the epicardial vessel is concerned, plaque disruption, coronary artery dissection, that is we call as a spontaneous coronary artery dissection, thromboembolism, vasospasm, or maybe vasospastic angina, or there may be coronary artery ectasia and there is a slow flow, etc., may be playing a role. So these are the together, we can call this, it's not MI, it is a missed obstructive coronary artery disease, minor atherosclerosis, non-atherosclerotic mechanism as spasm is responsible, and finally we say that I am not certain since we need more research, and this includes plaque disruption, vasospasm, dissection, thromboembolism, microvascular dysfunction, and disturbances in supply and demand mismatch, we call. Means demand increases, supply decreases. All these are responsible for non-coronary artery occlusion producing ischemia or MI, or also we call as a coronary microvascular dysfunction. So it will fit with type 2, oxygen demand, non-atherosclerotic coronary artery dissection, vasospasm. These three will be responsible for non-obstructive group. As well as we already mentioned, supply becomes less, demand becomes more, will be responsible for ischemia. So this will be all groups where oxygen supply and demand imbalance can take place, like fixed coronary atherosclerosis, coronary artery spasm, coronary embolism, coronary artery dissection, sustained tachycardia, severe hypertension, severe bradyarrhythmias, respiratory failure, severe anemia, hypotension and shock, etc. will be responsible. So usually the disease is very frequently at this level. We call it endocardial, close to endocardium, close to endocardium. So that is responsible. And some factors are responsible at the level of epicardial vessels. So we have already shown you this slide. This will be primary groups. This will be secondary groups. So in myocardial disease, vascular limb modeling is playing a role. In obstructive coronary artery disease, endothelial dysfunctions, and in iatrogenic, luminal obstruction and autonomic dysfunction will be playing a role. So you got more dysfunction at this level, myocardial, which cannot be demonstrated in routine coronary angiography. You cannot demonstrate that part. This you cannot see. This. What you see is this. Hence, we are not able to pick up those groups on routine angiography. So disease is more here at this level. We don't go into, so there are some physical factors like extravascular compression and neural factors like noradrenaline, adrenaline, acetylcholine, etc. They are playing a role. So you got a obstructive coronary artery disease, vasospasm and microvascular dysfunction, which is likely to produce microvascular dysfunctions. So this combination groups. So atherosclerotic disease, vasospastic disease and microvascular dysfunction, there is an overlap, and this together may be responsible for three mechanisms can overlap, and that may be responsible. So this particular slide will show you that classical ischemic cascade triggered by coronary vasospasm and epicardial stenosis, and you will have a perfusion, heterogeneity, metabolic alteration, diastolic dysfunction, regional dyssynergia, ECG changes, and person will have angina. ECG changes, angina, heterogeneity will be seen. So coronary artery spasm can be triggered by age, smoking, C-reactive protein can be high, can be also triggered by ergot alkaloids, sympathomimetics, parasympathomimetics, non-selective blockers, then cocaine, magnesium deficiency, alcohol, then hyperventilation alkalosis, remnant lipoproteinemias, Valsalva maneuver, physical or mental stress, cold pressures, and activated platelets. These are all the factors which can produce coronary artery spasm. Now, what is a clinical presentation? Typical angina or typical MI symptoms. Chest pain persists for several minutes after effort is interrupted and or shows the poor or slow response to nitroglycerin. This is very peculiar. While in case of an epicardial pathophysiology, the person will get a good response immediately to nitroglycerin, sublingual nitroglycerin. Induction of angina and ST segment depression, but not the left ventricular contractile abnormality. During an echocardiography, we call as a stress echocardiography, with dipyridamole or with dobutamine, you may not demonstrate that LV dysfunction. Early appearance of a ECG abnormality and on or angina during an exercise test performed after sublingual nitrate administration. This will be the peculiar things what can happen in a person with what we call as MINOCA or INOCA. So we divide into two groups, primary and secondary. We have already mentioned before. Person can present as a stable, predominant effort angina or can present as an angina even at rest. Typical anginal symptoms either on exertion or with rest, and exercise stress testing will be positive, and evidence of a stress induced myocardial ischemia may be demonstrable in primary variety, and on a coronary angiography it will be normal. So a person with what we called as coronary artery spasm related ischemic heart disease comprise of wide spectrum myocardial ischemic syndromes from silent myocardial ischemia to unstable angina or even acute MI and sudden cardiac death. Usually occurs in the midnight to early morning. Circadian variation of the tone of a coronary artery may be involved. ST depression more than ST segment elevation. It is associated with multiple arrhythmias like sinus bradycardia, sinus arrest, complete heart block, paroxysmal atrial fibrillation, ventricular premature beat, VT-VF, or even asystole. An activated platelet may aggravate what we call as classical coronary artery spasm, and this was being well established. So person will have a changes of an acute MI, but angiography will be normal, and it will be very difficult to decide whether you want to go for PCI or not. So if there is a clear cut demonstrable obstructive lesion, you will have to go for PCI. But in a MINOCA, there is no demonstrable obstructive lesion, so it becomes a dilemma. So in a real world situation, the person presents with a classical ischemia either as an angina, stable, unstable, or even with MI. ECG clearly shows either ST depression or an ST elevation. Troponin is positive, and on angiogram you will have two types of presentation. In case of an classical epicardial coronary artery involvement, you will have an obstructive coronary artery demonstration, maybe a complete obstruction or maybe say 90% obstruction, and there will be another group where troponin is positive. Person is having a classical chest pain of ischemic heart disease, but coronary arteries are near normal, and then it is labeled as troponin positive non-obstructive coronary artery. And then we usually follow a working diagnosis. Clinically it is overt. You will always try to rule out other causes, what we call the non-cardiac causes like pulmonary embolism, sepsis, ARDS, etc. Also in case of an subarachnoid hemorrhage, intracranial hemorrhage, those groups. Dynamic diagnosis, you will have a good echo where you can rule out Takotsubo, myocarditis, and for ruling out Takotsubo and myocarditis, the best investigation will be cardiac MRI. And also you should look for spontaneous coronary artery dissection and Takotsubo, which can be very close differential diagnosis of MINOCA. and in that case cardiac MRI, intravascular ultrasound, optical coherence tomography or fraction flow rate and cardiac flow reserve. All this investigation will be very helpful to pinpoint the probable pathophysiology for troponin positive non-obstructive coronary artery involvement. So optical coherence tomography becomes very helpful. So any person who comes with troponin positive, troponin rise and fall you should look for. Troponin level is stable. It is a chronic myocardial injury like structural heart disease or CKD. Look for these groups. If there is no ischemia, there may be acute myocardial injury like acute heart failure or myocarditis. This will be one group where you will have to rule out using a clinical criteria, and you can utilize even cardiac MRI. And if there is a clear-cut evidence of ischemia on an ECG, either it is because of atherosclerotic and thrombosis, like classical example of type 1 MI, where there is a plaque rupture or plaque erosion, or it is because of imbalance between oxygen supply and demand, which will be classical group we call as myocardial dysfunction, or we call INOCA and MINOCA, where it may be because of severe hypertension, sustained tachycardia, etc. You should look for these groups. So any person who has got clinical suspicion of MINOCA, good clinical history, ECG, echo and cardiac biomarkers will be going in favor of MINOCA. Then you have to have coronary angiography, particularly left ventricular angiography. If there is no regional wall motion abnormality with epicardial pattern, then we look for the epicardial causes like coronary arteries plaque, and that can be further helped by intravascular ultrasound or OCT, we call optical coherence tomography, and coronary dissection and coronary artery spasm. You can go for vasoreactive test and look for coronary function testing by vasoreactivity. You can go for fractional flow rate, coronary flow reserve, and you can go for ischemic myocardial reserve. Normal regional flow motion abnormality with microvascular pattern. So there is a regional wall abnormalities with a microvascular pattern, and here it is with epicardial pattern. Then you can go for coronary microvascular groups spasm, Takasubo. Takasubo will be very well identified by cardiac MRI, or you might have to go for an endomyocardial biopsy. Myocarditis can be also identified very nicely by cardiac MRI, and in case of a coronary thrombosis or coronary embolism, you can go for transesophageal echo or CE. So this is all those things put together. So a person who has got a criteria of MINOCA, exclude missed obstructive coronary artery disease or non-ischemic injury groups, and then you can put into a MINOCA groups. For this, consider the clinical criteria, and clinically if you are suspecting sepsis, pulmonary embolism, myocarditis or non-ischemic groups, then always try to rule out myocardial injury groups, we call as the non-cardiac groups and cardiac groups. And if you are suspecting a missed obstructive coronary artery disease, go for a LV function assessment, angiography, particularly LV angiography. So you can rule out obstructive coronary artery disease, spontaneous coronary artery dissection, etc. And by getting an LV LV angiography, you can rule out Takotsubo and other cardiomyopathies. And further, you can identify myocarditis, infiltrative cardiomyopathy, Takotsubo, etc. by even going for cardiac MRI with contrast. This will be the best investigation which will help you to differentiate all. And when finally all these are not conclusive, you can go for coronary vascular imaging like OCT or IVUS, which will help you to identify along with cardiac MRI, which will tell you that cardiac MRI confirm infarct, plaque rupture, thromboembolism, and when you go for coronary functional assessment by either provocative test, coronary artery spasm and microvascular disorders you can identify. This is a complete list. It is called a traffic light sequence for Minoka. This is a plaque rupture which can be better identified by, we call OCT rather than, this is IVUS, this is OCT. It is better identified by this procedure rather than with IVUS. And this is a classical condition we call spontaneous coronary artery dissection, which is a non-traumatic, non-iatrogenic, non-atherosclerotic separation of a coronary arterial wall by intramural hemorrhage, creating a false lumen with or without an intimal tear. This is described as spontaneous coronary artery dissection, and that will give rise to the decrease in the lumen size, and person can develop ischemic symptoms and signs. This also can be better demonstrable by, we call as OCT rather than IVUS. So it is better demonstrable, diagnosed by OCT or IVUS, but it is better demonstrable by OCT rather than IVUS. And on coronary angiography, it may be near normal. So sometime you can come to the diagnosis. Vasospasm is defined as more than 90% of the vasoconstriction of epicardial coronary artery, resulting in a compromised coronary blood flow. And to demonstrate this, you might use what we call as a provocative test. And in case of a coronary thromboembolism, it can be because of hypercoagulability, endothelial injury, blood stasis, or anatomical predisposition. But it can be also because of non-thrombotic causes like valvular vegetations, myxomatous tumors, emboli, or calcified aortic valve, which can produce calcium crystals as a part of non-thrombotic source. Coronary ectasia can be also responsible for these groups. So you will have to rule out that, and that can be ruled out very nicely by what we call as regional comparison of RCA with or without coronary artery ectasia. This is shown here. This is normal, and you can see here there is an ectasia. So coronary artery dilatation more than 1.5 fold diameter of adjacent normal coronary. You can see this is normal, and this particular portion is dilated. So that can demonstrate coronary ectasia. So these are all the investigation which we have discussed. These are invasive investigations. These are laboratory parameters which can be utilized, and you can go for cardiac MRI, and you can go for transesophageal echo. These are some of the investigation which will be helpful in case of Minoka. I've already discussed before. So angiography, if it shows more than 50%, treat as STEMI, and if it is less than 50%, no coronary stenosis, fulminant universal criteria, treat as Minoka, and acute LV motion assessment, angiography and echo will be very, very helpful, and you can treat as a Minoka. So myocarditis, you will require TTE or CMR. Coronary epicardial or microvascular disorders, you can diagnose by TTE, CMR, or bubble contrast echo. myocardial disease by TT-echo or CMR, particularly for Takotsubo myocarditis. And pulmonary embolism, you will require D-dimer CT scan of chest and thrombophilia patterns. And when you want to identify the imbalance between supply and demand, you will have to do the blood test and extra cardiac investigations. Very, very rarely we require an endomyocardial biopsy in case of a myocarditis. And there is an invasive procedure which is helpful in good number of conditions, particularly in a person with a coronary artery dissection, coronary artery spasm, etc. You can go for OCT, which is much better than IVUS. And particularly for coronary artery spasm, you can go for provocative test like ergonovin or acetylcholine test. And pressure effect, you can go with a Doppler wire to find out a microvascular dysfunction. So this is a differential diagnosis. We have already mentioned this is a mechanism, this is a clinical disorders, and these are the diagnostic evaluation. All we have mentioned before. This is cardiac MRI, which will help you to differentiate different conditions by looking at the wall abnormality, edema, microvascular obstruction, etc. It will help you to rule out those different conditions. Transthoracic echo and Doppler recording will be very, very helpful, and it will be also helpful to find out the coronary artery spasm, and if the ratio is less than 2 in response to adenosine, it will be more strongly suggestive of coronary microvascular dysfunction. So this is a case study of 55-year-old woman who had CMR done, and finding was suggestive of anterior subendocardial myocardial infarction, which will be clearly established. This is a stress perfusion and this is a rest perfusion, and this clearly shows that there is area of subendocardial hypoperfusion of LV clearly. So that is importance of this stress perfusion, which you cannot demonstrate by normal coronary angiography. And on an ECG, you can see that clearly there is an anterior wall infarct. On angiography, non-obstructive, but you can find out this particularly by going for further investigation, which you cannot make out by LV angiography or by coronary angiography. You will have to go for other investigations. Also, you can go for what we call as a PET scan, which can give you an idea regarding a damaged part. A microcirculation picture you cannot get, hence you will have to go for detailed investigations, because microvascular can be because of arterial remodeling, intraluminal obstruction, extravascular compression, or vasomotor abnormality, or capillary rarefactions. All these are possible mechanisms. Still, there are a lot of things to be understood, right from epicardial blood vessels to endocardial vessels. You will have to go for detailed investigations. So, we know that microvascular spasm can be impaired vasodilatation or increased vasoconstriction, which can be because of endothelin, catecholamines, or acetylcholine or serotonin, while this impaired can be because of, which can be independent of adenosine or catecholamines, or flow related, that is because of acetylcholine, serotonin, histamine, bradykinin, etc. Or there can be microvascular obstruction in the form of a thrombus or platelet aggregations. Hence, you can do a coronary functional testing by interventional diagnostic procedure using IV adenosine or intracoronary acetylcholine, and then you can look for coronary flow reserve, which will give you an idea regarding the microvascular spasm or microvascular resistance. So this particular can be utilized. This particular shows you that coronary functional testing is being done, and it will give you an idea regarding whether there is a microvascular reserve is affected or there is a coronary artery spasm. So you can go for acetylcholine provocative test, which will give you an idea regarding a spasm of epicardial coronary artery. This is a baseline. This is a post acetylcholine. You get a spasm, and post nitroglycerin you can see that it is opened up again. So there is what we call a spasm of epicardial coronary artery. So these are diagnostic challenges which can be done to find out epicardial coronary artery disorders from coronary microvascular disorders. You will have to go for coronary flow reserve. I am not going into detail, so you can look for fractional flow reserve, which will be mainly for epicardial vessel, while coronary flow reserve will be helpful for both epicardial as well as microcirculatory. So you can go for that. These are all those complicated diagrams, even I don't understand much. This is coronary flow reserve, which you can see on angiography, and then with intracoronary Doppler baseline, and after giving adenosine you can study that CFR and then decide whether how much is the flow reserve. And we know that coronary blood flow is maximum during diastole and it is less during systole. So you can find out a reserve by doing angiography along with a Doppler. So I'm skipping all this. Now this is a recommendation which was being done for suspected coronary microvascular dysfunction, that is class 2A exercise and dobutamine echo. Class 2B was transthoracic Doppler echo, and acetylcholine or adenosine with Doppler measurements was class 2B, and then you try to find out the coronary flow reserve and you can detect epicardial vasospasm. Contrast stress echo is also helpful. PET scan, SPECT scan, CMRI, that is cardiac MRI, all these are good and they are non-invasive technique. Coronary angiography with provocative testing is the only method for diagnosing coronary artery spasm. Stepwise therapeutic approach for microvascular angina. Mainly what we utilize is 3 drugs, either of these 3: beta blocker, calcium channel, and nitrates. By and large, these are best effective. Of these, the beta blocker is the best. Nitrates are usually less preferred as compared to CCB. While you can add on other anti-ischemic drugs like ranolazine, ivabradine, ACE inhibitor. You can use statins. Also, they have tried xanthines and estrogens. Of this, ranolazine is better. Another is ivabradine. And if symptom persists, then you have to go for rehabilitation programs. You can go for spinal cord stimulation. You can use antidepressant drugs like imipramine, etc. And depending upon the coronary functional testing. If there is a microvascular angina, you can use beta blocker and lifestyle modification. If there is a vasospastic angina, CCB and lifestyle modifications. And if there is a non-cardiac, then you have to go for, depending upon anti-anginal therapy, you will have to stop that anti-anginal therapy and go for non-cardiac treatment, that is psychiatric treatment. So this will be there. By and large, in this particular what we call the microvascular angina, antiplatelet drugs are usually not preferred. So patient with a chest pain, you go for, if symptoms are stable, go for SPECT, MRI or PET scan. There is a normal myocardial stress evaluation. If answer is yes, evaluate non-ischemic cardiac groups and then you can put them on antidepressants. While if symptoms are not stable, you can go for coronary angiography, and if coronary angiography shows normal angiography, then you can consider cardiovascular function studies test, and if there is a normal coronary vascular function study, then you can go for what we call as an antidepressant therapy, and if there is a positive test, coronary vascular functions are abnormal, then you can go for aspirin, beta blocker, statin, angiotensin converting enzymes, tricyclic antidepressant, exercise training, etc. And if there is a normal angiography is not there, then you can go for coronary reserve revascularization. Means this will be going for what we call is a ischemic heart disease group. You will have to go for revascularization therapy. So this is an individualized approach what you can go for. These are the drugs which are commonly being utilized, of which the short acting nitrates can be utilized. Most common which is being utilized is a beta blocker, and second common which is being utilized is non dihydropyridine groups, that is diltiazem and verapamil, which is belonging to calcium channel blocker. Prenalazine, ivabradine may be helpful. Also nicorandil is also one of the drug of choice. ACE inhibitor, statin, xanthine, alpha antagonist and estrogen. These are the other add-on drugs. The person in whom even coronary microvascular flow studies, reserve studies, if they are negative, imipramine is a drug of choice. There are other additional treatment which we call as a non-pharmacological treatment like spinal cord stimulation, enhanced external counter pulsation, rehabilitation program, particularly training, which will reduce the sympathetic tone, and psychological intervention will be of much help. This is spinal cord stimulation which can be utilized to reduce the pain, and this is what is called enhanced external counter pulsation, which you can utilize. As far as the treatment is concerned, which is recommended, class 1 B level, aspirin and statin. Beta blocker is again class 1B. Calcium channel blocker, again class 1B. ACE inhibitor and nicorandil belongs to class 2B. And xanthine and neurostimulator techniques also belongs to class 2B, and that has been recommended by European Society of Cardiology in 2013 guidelines. So the most common drug which are being utilized will be beta blocker, aspirin, statin, and then comes calcium channel blocker. Nitrates are usually not preferred. Nicorandil is add-on therapy, and if the person does not respond, we call drug refractory, then you might have to go for stenting, is more preferred as compared to CABG. And if a person is having arrhythmia as a predisposing factor, intracardiac device. As far as complication is concerned, there are less complication in case of a microvascular dysfunction, but you should not forget, MINOCA is associated with a risk of death or recurrent MI, approximately in 50% of those with obstructive coronary artery disease, and 4 to 5 times those with non-prior cardiovascular disease. MINOCA patient has got predominant non-coronary vascular disease cause of death. MINOCA patient with a normal coronary artery and mild obstructive coronary have similar adverse event rates, whether it is a normal coronary artery or a mild coronary events. Patient with a MINOCA has lower rates of acute coronary syndrome. Evidence-based treatment potentially increases event rates. So you should try to identify MINOCA and treat them seriously. Why you want to diagnose a MINOCA? Because false positive STEMI diagnosis will give rise to lot of complication because of the procedures which are done for STEMI. There is a clinical difference to obstructive coronary artery disease, that prevalence is almost 7% of acute MI. Clinical profile overrepresented in women and young. Prognosis is equivalent to almost 1:2. Mechanism very frequently is spasm, emboli or microvascular dysfunction. So therapy is calcium channel blocker and antithrombotics. Evaluation of underlying cause like extracardiac cause like pulmonary embolism, stroke, sepsis, ARDS, etc. should be kept in mind. And among the cardiac group, ischemic and non-ischemic causes should be also ruled out, so that you can give a proper treatment. So, diagnostic criteria, prevalence and risk factors. Among risk factor, younger age, female is more common. Prevalence is almost 10 to 15% of all acute myocardial infarctions. And diagnostic criteria is typical universal criteria of acute MI. On angiography, non-obstructive coronary artery disease means less than 50% of stenosis, and there is no overt cause for presentation of evident at angiography. So when all these criteria are fulfilled, you will label that as MINOCA or INOCA. And as far as the management is concerned, CMR, that is cardiac MRI, is topmost on the list. Also consider D-dimer and coronary artery spasm provocative test may be utilized. Prognosis wise, 5% all cause mortality at 12 months and 25% of angina recurrence at 12 months. Management is usually done by statin, angiotensin inhibitors or ARB to reduce the adverse cardiac events. So always keep this thing in mind in the person in whom you are suspecting a coronary artery spasm or we call other causes, non-cardiac causes like myocarditis, Takotsubo, or also as non-cardiac troponin elevations. You must keep that thing in mind. So I end my lecture here. Thank for taking out time. I know that your time is valuable and I appreciate you for spending some of the time with me. This is one particular thing which is very important. Good number of time it is neglected because coronary angiography comes normal and you say that you don't have anything, don't worry. But person may be having INOCA or MINOCA. You should be able to suspect and investigate properly. And if you demonstrate that person is having MINOCA or INOCA and you give a proper treatment, you can reduce the chance of mortality. If you like this particular lecture, please press button like, subscribe, and if you feel it is useful to your friends, you can share with